It's been 2 weeks since the whole thing started. It all started with a tanker accident. It was all over the news. Everyone thought it was just another oil spill. There were plenty of volunteers and plenty of people wanting to help the poor, defenseless animals, plenty of the victims. Within hours of the tanker accident, it started happening. The animals had gone crazy. They were scratching and biting to clean up volunteers. They said that it was advised to the effect of whatever that was in the tanker. Rescue workers were still trying to get the crew out of the ship. They could hear screaming inside. There were screams to open the doors, but that's when all went to hell, as soon as they cut the doors out. There were 6 minutes of broadcast before it went silent. 6 minutes of screaming and agony. The ship crew attacked and the rescue workers like rabid baboons. They were breaking bones, tearing flesh, and people on the shore weren't faring any better. Those that had been attacked by animals were attacking everyone else. It was worse than any war zone report. It was sheer brutality. And yet the broadcast still went on for 6 minutes. There was 6 minutes, then blank faces. Nobody could explain what was happening. They tried to continue with the regular news, the economy and the weather and the cute human interest story, but they couldn't make it the unseen of what we saw. I tried to continue with my regular existence, but every time I switched on the news or walked by a newsstand, it was there. This was just a big mystery. They had some explanations. It was an infection, or maybe some brain parasites, but it didn't matter. It wasn't the infection we were afraid of. It was them. 4 days after the initial report, the state of emergency was raised, and yet we've all seen this before. It's in every zombie movie ever. People didn't know who to trust. People were stockpiling food and weapons. Some tried to flee, but it seems like every zombie movie was right. They didn't make it. 3 days later, they arrived in my town. I expected moans, shuffling corpses, and dismemberment, but that's where all the movies lied. They ran through the streets screaming. I remember running to my front door as fast as I could, locking and barricading and doing everything to make sure that it would stay shut. And then I headed for the window. I was on the second story so I could see the carnage. They were unstoppable. They were aware. A group of them made their way through the building across the street. They jumped straight through the glass windows, even though the sharp slicing through them made no difference. They just kept coming. My barricade wasn't going to hold. I rushed around my flat, grabbing the supplies and jamming them into the most secure room of the flat. I went back to one last look across the street, and I wish I hadn't. On the second story window, my face was met with theirs. They knew where I was. I quickly dashed into the room and locked the door. I don't have any kind of panic room or secure basement, so the safest place I could think of was my bathroom. There were no windows and only one door. It had a lock. It had filled my sink with a bathtub full of water, so I could stay for a while. I sat there in the dark room with distant screams in my ears. I began to feel like may have overreacted. It had been 2 hours with no sign of them. It actually got quieter, and I thought they had moved on. Maybe I could leave the room and get out of the kitchen. I could grab some more food and wait it out. A crash came from the front door. There was the sound of someone running with full force to the door, knocking down the barrier behind it. There were a couple more crashes before I knew they were inside. There were rapid footsteps moving around the flat, a couple screams, and then a couple of bangs on the wall beside me. My eyes were open to their wildest, and even in the pitch blackness of the room, there was another big bang and then another. They knew I was there, and they already knew I was scared. This was the zombie nightmare I had been expecting from the start. I had nowhere to run. There was only so much time before they would break in. I sat there with my back against the door, hoping my extra weight would make it out harder for them to get in. Then it gets worse. Why don't you open the door? There was a voice on the opposite side of the door. There were no more screams or moans. Just a quiet, whispery voice, and then more of them. We've come for you. You'll be happier if you open the door. It's not so bad. whispering voices have came a top of me of noise, trying to persuade me, trying to break me, to fool me. I had heard, and that the moaning of zombies would drive anyone insane. But this was worse, a siren call. I sat in the darkness and hoped and prayed that they would get bored, but they don't get bored, and they don't leave. I managed to use a mirror to peek under the door, only to be greeted by horrible, unblinking eyes, blood-smeared faces, screams, and more horrible whispers. That was 2 days ago. I don't know what to do anymore. Maybe it won't be so bad.